I'm gonna interrupt him. All right, we'll call the meeting to order at 6 o'clock. Kelly, roll call, please.
Doug.
Here.
Karen. Here. John.
Here.
Jerry.
Here.
So all 4 council members present. Could I get a motion to approve our agenda?
I'll make a motion for the agenda. Second that. Doug, aye.
Karen, I.
John, aye. Jerry, aye.
4 ayes on the agenda, and then consistent with our tradition, we'll open it up for any citizen comment prior to going into the agenda. Any comments from the citizens?
Not at the moment.
All right, we'll do it again at the end. So with no other comments, we'll move on to the consent agenda. We'll take a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion for the consent agenda. I'll second. Doug, aye.
Karen, I.
John, aye. Jerry, aye.
Consent agenda approved with 4 ayes. Next up is the public hearings. First is a public hearing on proposal to enter into an essential purpose loan agreement. This looks like it is one of 2. Second one that we'll do is the urban renewal loan agreement, and then the resolution after the 2 public hearings. So we'll open the public hearing for the essential purpose loan agreement. Anybody have any comment to offer on that?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing. Second that. Doug, aye.
Karen, I.
John, aye. Jerry, aye.
Public hearing closed with 4 ayes. Next up is the public hearing on the urban renewal loan agreement. We will open the public hearing now. Anybody have any comments on that?
Make a motion to close the public hearing. I'll second. Doug, aye.
Karen, I.
John, aye. Jerry, aye.
With no public input, that public hearing is also closed. So then we will take up the resolution taking additional action on proposals to enter into a loan agreement and combining loan agreements. You want to give this just a sentence or 2 narrative, maybe,
Yeah,
Whitney?
absolutely, and I talked before with council members because this is confusing. So this is really only one loan, it's only one bond sale, but because the projects that are being funded by the bond fall into 2 different purposes, we had to hold 2 hearings. So essential purpose is infrastructure-based roads, sewer, water. By law, the council does not have to ask the voters' permission to borrow money for those purposes. So that is essential purpose. General purpose, or in this case, an urban renewal purpose, is things like new city facilities, new parks, land acquisition for parks. So you can see where our Parks, Trails, land acquisition project falls under the general purpose. In our case, it's also an urban renewal project, which is why it's titled as such. So splitting them apart for the public hearing meets our legal requirement. Unfortunately, it's kind of counterintuitive. So really, the resolution puts them back together because it really was only ever one loan, but we have to notice them and provide the public opportunity to comment on them separately. And then we'll handle it from this point forward. It will be one. We'll discuss it as one bond, one loan.
All right, thank you, Whitney. Any other commentary on that? Any discussion? If not, we can entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to enter the loan agreements, combine loan agreements. Second that. Doug, aye.
Karen, I.
John, aye. Jerry, aye.
Motion carries with 4 ayes. Next, we've got the PCC update. I don't see Stacy. Oh, Stacy on?
Is, oh,
So we're going to try the new technology here. Stacy, can you hear us okay? We're not hearing you yet.
I think. So close, but not Yeah, I think she can hear us because she unmuted. Let me pop back and see. Try one thing, otherwise I'm gonna call her up.
She can see Stacy talking.
So for your all's benefit, this is our first meeting where we're trying to use a better virtual capability.
And we're hitting it out of the park.
And well, the hardware's been installed, but there's been no training yet. So what you see is us trying to run it on our own.
Would you change it to the microphone for the assistant?
I can get it on TV. Yeah, remote TV.
You hear it on the TV?
Not anymore, she won't at all.
All right.
I think we just set it to the laptop's audio.
Go down to the hashtag. Here it is, Stacy.
Hello. All right. Sorry about that. Okay, so you guys have my update for this meeting. I guess first, do you guys have any questions on anything that is there?
I'm not hearing any questions in the room, Stacy. What would you like to
Okay.
highlight?
Okay. I guess the biggest thing I want to add is the governor added or did a new proclamation today that we're going to have to change some things with tournaments and weddings and such, and we're still trying to figure out all of what it means. But that's what we'll be kind of working on the next couple days to make sure that we continue to do everything that we're required to do.
Very good.
If that's everything, then I'm good if you guys don't have any questions.
Stacy, I just want to let you know that the tournament this weekend went really well, and your staff was overly helpful whenever we had questions, needed help, needed whatever. They bent over backwards to help us. So if you want to pass that along as a big thank you.
I will absolutely do that. Thanks.
So while we're passing accolades, I would also say thank you for the work compensating for the loss. I mean, we're down on memberships, but I see the revenue in day passes and gym rentals is so significantly up. Not sure exactly what you did to make that happen, but that's appreciated. Good job.
Thanks. Yeah, no, I think some of it is as far as gym rental, we have a lot more tournaments than we've had before. We're also doing more programs as far as leagues and stuff than we've done before, which has also helped with revenue. So we're trying where we can to get additional revenue.
Good deal. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Seeing nobody else ready to say anything in the room, I think we can move past the PCC update. Thank you, Stacy. Next on the agenda is the police update. Chief Comer.
You guys have my monthly report. You guys have any questions on that? I can answer for you.
We'll just ask if there's anything from this past month you would highlight.
Yeah, so policy and procedure, that was a past resolution. We just did that. That's a great thing done. Thank you guys for passing that. I'm glad it's done, and we can move on from there. The one thing I do want to just bring up, coming up November 16th through November 29th is the next step wave, and that's the Click It or Ticket campaign. So buckle up.
What were those dates again?
The 16th through the 29th. That's what the next campaign is Click It or Ticket. So that's about all I got for you, other than if you guys have questions for me.
No, I'm coming to really appreciate months when there really isn't much to report on the police report. Thank you.
So when I look at the sheriff's event in Peosta, most of it is basically just business checks, right?
Correct. A lot of them are where they just come in and do what if they have civil papers, business checks. You know, if we're not here, they come in and do their own checks and everything too. So,
Right, but I don't see a lot of extra.
no, there wasn't a lot of. I don't think.
I mean, there might be some picture calls.
There might have been a couple here and there that they've gone to, but I don't remember or recall anything significant.
That's good.
For this month anyway.
pay a monthly fee to them?
No, it's just part of the taxpayers, and that's just jurisdiction of the county to come and help out.
As we cover more and more of the calendar time, do we get any back?
I'm sorry,
As we cover more and more of the calendar time, do we get any of that back?
on what, you said?
The tax money that's going to the sheriff's department.
But it's just a normal, like it's an 85.
Yeah, it's just 85.
So when we're not on duty, they just cover it.
Correct.
I say it tongue in cheek.
Oh.
All right, anything else for Chief Comer? Very good, thank you, Chief. Public Works is next with our report from Dean.
So I don't really have anything to add to on the report, just a couple things that I wanted to follow up on. To my understanding, somebody brought to the attention last council meeting about 2 of the lights up in 4th Edition. So I looked into that. Looks like we got some rodents up in the poles. Called up Derek with Royal Oaks, and he brought it to Jermaine's attention. I hadn't heard nothing yet from Jermaine, but I think we're going to have to. What I'm waiting to do is hear from him and get down and actually try to take them poles up again somehow or other to seal up them conduits, so that those rodents ain't getting in there. It's it's going to be a continuous problem otherwise. So that's where we're at on that. The sidewalk pertaining to the gas company last year, that again was just a temporary fix. I did contact them, hoping to put in, something of a better temporary, but they will be coming in probably next year again to tear those slabs out and follow up on that continuation of that connection underneath the railroad tracks as soon as they get their permit.
Thank you.
They do look better.
Yes.
Pardon?
They do look a lot better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So on the compost, are we hauling everything now? We're not taking and burning anything anymore over there?
At this point, well, we're still piling some trees out there, but we haven't burned in a long time due to the dry weather and the wind. So yeah, if we get some wind direction, in our favor, where it's taking the smoke away from town, we'll definitely light that up now that we got some moisture.
Do you want to share more about the alliance?
Oh yeah, so brought in a few of the members' attention about a sinkhole that we experienced down on Cap Drive, joining the Myers Cox property. Did some investigating on that, dug that up, and experienced where Alliant actually, when they did the directional drilling for underground, they actually went through the service line of the sewer service line of Myers Cox. So so we did a repair on that, and to my understanding, they agreed upon the payment on it.
That's what the tube is there now? There's a tube sticking out of the ground by Myers?
Yeah, so there actually was a clean out there, it just got buried. Whether it was a matter of silt that got put through there in time or whatever actually happened there, but it did get buried. But the clean out actually was there. So we put a new one in place, and eventually we'll cut that off at ground level and put a casting under it. That actually tracks and indicates where the end of our actual main is to in that location. So it's actually helpful for us as well. That clean out there is. It's actually hard to believe that Myers Cox, their sewer was actually operating as well as it did through the number of years that it had been broken. So.
Indeed, do you think, oh, go ahead, please.
Which did create a lot of information as well during our rains with that sewer, that line broke like that.
How many thousand gallons do you think that was?
Depending on the rain, but we were.
Because that was always looking for something that was about 20,000, 50,000 gallons.
Well, we were definitely getting some severe infiltration, in a short matter of time after a rainfall, within minutes, we were
That
getting.
spot right there is just, that's a waterway, all the way down past the Premier Tool there, and it cuts across the road.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
And another sinkhole that we did experience was between the properties of the Catholic Church and the dentist office. We dug that up the other day too and noticed that the storms were pretty well collapsed in that area. So we're going to have to
yard, or where's that one at?
It's actually, just south of the curb line for the parking lot. So just to the south of the parking lot, yeah. And then it dumps out down there by, First Gear.
Anything else for Dean? All right. Thank you very much. Next up then is the IIW uncontracted hours discussion. I think we're going to have Eldon on the phone. We're going to try this one again.
Yeah.
Or
Eldon, can you try to say something? I've been texting him. He said he can hear us. Darn it.
So,
If you want to go back to your settings, the way you had it before, it started from, it actually started to play out of it before Stacy left, you could hear stuff going through.
Oh, okay. Let me try to put it back. Hold on a second, Eldon. Put it back on the TV speaker.
It's nice to have the IT guys here.
yeah. So you want to come grab the remote? Please, if you know what you're doing, we'll take the help.
I think she's got her computer right there. Yeah, it was. Yeah, she's got it. Yep. So just tell me the LCD display.
All right. I keep jumping until you guys tell me to shut up.
All right. Easy. Can you hear us?
Thank you.
All right.
Available on Tuesday nights.
Sign your paper now.
Thanks to some help in the on the audience here today. I think we got you going, Eldon. So I'll set this up. This is around a invoice that was received from IIW for additional work related to the wastewater treatment plant, specifically around the iterations of getting the documentation approved through the EDA. Eldon, we had talked a little bit about this last week, just prepping for this conversation. I've also prepared the council members with the same information I had shared with you. So the question that we've got from a city council point of view is this appears to be related to redundant effort that's not rooted in a change or anything that the city would have been liable for. And we're looking for more justification or whatever there is to say why the city ought to pay this additional expense as opposed to IIW.
Yeah, so let me just, I'm getting some feedback. I don't know if it's possible to ignore that. Are you guys hearing the feedback too, or is it just me?
Just your.
No, nothing on our end.
Okay. Alright, so I'm gonna do this while I hear myself in the background. So the work that we're talking about took place in March.
Hey, Eldon. Eldon, hang on. Maybe we can do better. Do you want to? I think one of your choices was to choose the TV, right?
Yeah, but that's what didn't work.
I think it was working, but the volume was low.
Can you mute you?
What?
Can you mute you?
Well, I expected to have your microphone, your mic on that, the one, the green one on our.
But that's how he can hear us.
Yeah, but that's probably. Well, while he is talking, you can mute it, because right now.
It seemed to work fine with Stacy on the call. Maybe I can just have you call me and speaker me in.
Yeah, but then people here can't hear you.
So, Whitney, do you want to just mute us while he's talking? Can you do that from your laptop, or is that in the back room?
It's back here, and that's, well, let me see if I can move it from here. This is really, okay. Microphones. Is that any better, Eldon? Okay, Eldon, are you still echoing?
Let me talk a little bit. Yeah, I'm still echoing.
Hang on a moment, Eldon. I think we're going to try another adjustment here. Thanks for your patience.
Sure.
Good thing for the high school kids. She just walked up there.
Now try Alvin. Are you? Or can't hear.
Yeah, he can't hear you telling him.
Hey, Eldon, we're gonna mute ourselves. You actually still have it muted.
You can't hear us.
Hey, Eldon, we're gonna mute ourselves so you can speak and you won't hear the echo, but we won't be able to talk. Just let us know when you're done talking, okay?
Okay.
Here you go.
All right, Mayor, I can see you by the way pretty well. So if you need me to stop talking at any point, just give me a hand sign of, hang down or stop or whatever. All right, so the working question that we submitted an invoice for was for additional services done back in March. We had submitted to the city, the Iowa DNR, and the USEDA, the 100% and the final documents at that time. So we're dealing with two kind of separate reviews, one from the Iowa DNR, one from the EDA. The EDA is really the one in question. We had originally scoped in our agreement 16 hours worth of responding to comments during that period. We felt that was a reasonable time based on our previous interactions on these projects. When we got to the review phase, the review comments that came back from EDA were some substantive, some on the bidding documents, and some on, most of them had to do with the technical specifications with relation to having using a particular verbiage or wording for how we're listing manufacturers. In our general conditions of the agreement, we allow the situation where or equals were just assumed, they were presumed, and except for when we say these are substitutions. And EDA did not approve of that in this case. They wanted to have any list of manufacturers. Did you want me to stop, Whitney? I'll stop.
No, sorry,
He can't hear you.
You're good.
Okay. They want to have the list of manufacturers with that list of manufacturers and then also approve equal after the fact. So anywhere that we had listed or equal, or we had listed the use of substitutions allowed, if we didn't figure we had an or equal listed, they wanted us to include or approved equal at every single one of those points. And it ended up being about 100 specs that we had to change, which necessitated basically resubmitting the entire set of documents. So all of the specifications and all of the drawings, because they were not necessarily consistent in their use of that particular verbiage. We used or equal, we used substitutions, we used or approved equal, but she wanted them all to be the same. So we went through that effort. Basically at that time dropped everything to get those done because we had about a 2-week window to get everything submitted to her to be able to meet the bidding timeline we had established. So we did all that and resubmitted full documents, shipped them off to her overnight to get them reviewed. And then we got a second round of comments that basically made us resubmit the second one because the way we had in list form versus in sentence form was different, and it wasn't acceptable. So it was much faster, obviously, going through it the second time, because all we had to do was a word search, but we still had to resubmit a full set of documents. So that was probably the bulk of the work. That was extra. There was also some other things that we had to do with the cost opinion that we prepared for the city. We prepared a one-page cost opinion for you as a part of the 100% design to give you a cost opinion to put in the bidding documents. We provide a similar level of information to the EDA on previous projects, similar engineer, but that wasn't an acceptable format this time. And so I had to go back and create basically a detailed cost opinion instead of a summary cost opinion. It sounds kind of easy, but it ends up taking information from about 6 or 8 spreadsheets and putting it in the same kind of format. So it was a time drag. And then the last part was just the general coordination. I mean, we were at the same time we were doing all this, we were also preparing documents for making sure that we were meeting all the timelines. We were gathering other stuff for PCIA, especially related to like the ownership title searches that were going on. And I think there was one more thing on the list that we talked about, which would have been just the phone calls. So we had a number of conference phone calls with EDA at that time, coordinating timeline and everything else. So that was what was built into that time that we spent. So if there's any questions, I'd be glad to hear.
Hey Alden, John Kraft here. So my question to you is, these changes in what you talked about, is this something that the EDA changes frequently, or is this something that's been consistent throughout time?
Well, I would say they didn't look at these documents until they were finished and sent to them.
Right. No.
So
What I'm saying
is it consistent? Yes, they consistently want to do or equals, but it wasn't stated that they wanted to have or equals only and not substitutions until that time.
So is that something that maybe you should have known?
I mean, they would have had to convey that to us by reviewing a preliminary set of specs.
I mean, in your history of working with the EDA, right? I'm assuming this is the first time you ever worked with them.
No, we did the Dyersville was an EDA project with the same reviewer.
Okay. So
yeah.
Is this different? Is this a different expectation EDA's put on you than then, or is it the same?
I would say there's a different level. I'd say there's a different level of it, because we basically sat in there and had to go through each and every spec where we did list multiple manufacturers and allow or equals, and then go in and change the exact verbiage to be matching across every single spec, which I don't think we did previously.
Well, I guess my point on that is, this is something you guys do all day, every day. I think you would have, my thought is you'd know this. It sounds, and without being rude, it sounds like you got sloppy.
Sorry, that last part cut off.
I said it sounds like you got sloppy.
Well, I would disagree with that, because I think we were working with several engineers, and it makes it very clear that there was probably only 1 or 2 instances across there where we didn't have the multiple brand names listed we were previously required to have. So there's an expectation, and then there was an expectation the next level, which I think that's what we're talking about here. That's my opinion on it.
So, Eldon, when I spoke with the EDA to understand some more of the background on this, I learned a couple of things. I also spoke with ECIA to get some background on this. And the people at IIW that worked on the Dyersville facility were not the same ones that worked on this project, right?
That's correct. Yeah, we have the lead engineers.
So, and I also checked with other engineers outside of this issue that work in the same field, and I got the consistent answer back that the or approved equal is industry standard terminology. The idea of doing approved or equal is not something anybody had heard of. And just allowing a substitution without an engineering approval is also considered bad practice because it doesn't require the engineer approval before substitution. So in those instances, it's appearing as though, oh, I'm sorry, and in talking with ECIA and EDA, I was also advised that the same situation or something very, very similar happened with the Dyersville project, where prints needed to be sent back for the same reason.
Okay. I missed the middle of that, but I think I caught the end of it. Okay.
So doing a little talking around, it sounds like the same problem happened with the Dyersville project. And the other point that we're learning, or that we're at least understanding, is that the or approved equal verbiage is considered an industry norm, and other derivations of that are not. The value of that, the or approved equal, is that it requires engineering approval before there's any substitution.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, Mayor. I think the real issue at heart is that the way the contract, the actual agreement is written, the general conditions are that the use of the or equal or approved equal was inherent in listing the manufacturers by virtue of the general conditions. When we wrote substitution, there's also items discussed in there in the general conditions of the contract of what it takes to approve a substitution. It is not you just submit on it. It means approved. So yeah, I mean, I agree that there's a lot of those statements are not wrong, but it doesn't mean that our contract didn't include those things.
So if I move on to the detailed cost breakdown, at the PER, the preliminary engineering report, the cost roll-ups were provided along with 5 pages of cost detail. And then at the 100% design report, it was only the cost roll-up that was there, not the 5 pages. So I understand there was extra work to go put the additional 5 pages of cost detail to it. Looking back at the application though, I do see in the, let me get the right term, the ED 900C instructions for the application, it clearly dictates in paragraph C7 that there must be detail supporting the roll-ups. So there too, we look at that and think that seems to indicate that this is stuff that IIW should have known at the time this was completed, not after the fact.
Yeah, I would say as part of the application, we did have to go back and actually create that detailed cost opinion. I agree, and we did that for the EDA application. As a part of the final design, we were. I mean, I could have prepared that, and I would have prepared it ahead of time, but I was relying on what we had submitted for Dyersville, which is just a 1-page thing. So I did not take the time that would have taken for to do that.
Hey, Alvin, this is Doug Hughes. My question is, why do you think it's okay just to send a bill on this versus coming to the council meeting and explaining that?
Well, to be honest, I thought this had gone in front of the council back in May or June. I was just kind of made aware of this last week.
But that didn't answer my question. My question was, why didn't you come to the council? Why didn't you come to the council before you sent the bill and said, hey, there's going to be some expected costs coming?
Yeah, I don't know if Jim's on, but I know that when I talked to him, My understanding was that Jim talked to Whitney about this back in April and said there will be a bill coming, and she said send it. And my understanding is that it just got on the agenda. I was not aware it was even on the agenda or not even talked about yet.
Right, so that's correct. In April, Jim called when Veronica was asking for all these things, which, I mean, I still have a couple other questions, because I was copied on a lot of those emails, and said, we are gonna exceed this 16 hours. I asked by how much. His estimate at that point was about half of what this invoice is, and I said, send it. Right, I mean, there was definitely no, I mean, I don't think anybody would argue there wasn't a written approval, because I told them that we'll have to go in front of the council. So, and then that was the last that was spoken of. Until Cody reached out to me. Cody is in your finance department, right?
That's correct.
Can they hear me
now?
Sorry, say that again?
Can you? Yeah, can you hear me with me?
Yes,
This is Jim.
yes, you can. So yeah, you recall that conversation. So yeah, I totally told you to send that invoice, and then that was, we didn't hear anything else.
Yeah, and what happened was, on the main invoice, it was supposed to be included on there as an extra service, just according to the agreement and everything that you saw last month that was submitted. And Cody did not include that. So when I saw that last month, I said, that needs to be invoiced as an extra service, and then that's when we sent the justification. So I just was aware of it last month myself, that it didn't get sent. I checked into it to see if it had been sent. So it was just that it got overlooked by Cody, and I checked on it, and it didn't get sent. So that's why it got sent last month, and Whitney and I had talked about it, like she said, and it was supposed to be sent to her.
And didn't, but at that point, remember, we were talking about a little bit of a different figure too. Do you recall that, Jim?
And I lost about 90% of that with me, I'm sorry.
Sorry, we were talking, the number we initially discussed was not this large.
No, it was 7,000 to 10,000, and then our consultant did not, our sub-consultant did not have their invoice submitted to us until after May, and that's where that additional, if you looked at the email, I added that on there.
Yeah, so can you explain why the mechanical, where the mechanical and electrical, like what Veronica kicked back that affected the mechanical and electrical pieces?
It's probably been helping me, I'm very sorry, I couldn't.
Can you explain, or maybe Eldon explain what Veronica kicked back that triggered that subcontractor having such a significant charge outside the scope of the contract?
Yeah, I can try to respond here. That would be the same level of information that we talked about earlier with the specifications being changed. And getting detailed cost opinions from them as well.
That cost $7,000?
Well, it'll be there, but they have additional changes as a part of the specifications.
So, but I know, like, I mean, surely you have to, like, it is a ton of hours. It is a lot of hours.
Yes, I personally know that I spent a straight week getting the stuff turned around, getting people organized, getting schedules set up so that people knew what to change and where.
So yes, I mean, really, what it comes down to is that, I guess, I mean, I think we're shaking down to the position that some of that should be included in the $1.1 million that is under the regular contract. So the coordinating the schedules, and Veronica specifically said in her email, she asked if the or approved people would change before the finals were sent. I mean, I'm glad this process worked how it should,
missed that was the last thing he said.
So Veronica's email states that she says in her email says the or approved equal hasn't been added, even though I asked you to at the last review. So the fact that all had to be reprinted and overnighted based on Veronica's account, I don't know, it just feels like there's some shared responsibility here. Like if you're saying that 0% of this extra work was anything that could or should have been a known condition, I think that's what I'm having a hard time with, because that's so many hours and so much. I mean, $7,000 of mechanical and electrical, that just, it's really bizarre. That doesn't seem right that 0% of that work falls under the actual contract. I hope you can see where, from where sitting, this feels a little off.
I couldn't
Or
hear
not.
much of that, Eldon, I'm sorry.
No, I think I got some. I think I got most of it. Sorry. It just keeps going in and out, but I definitely do catch the theme, and the emotion that I guess that we're really conveying here. And so, you know, if you think we need to go back and look and take some of that out, and have a different conversation maybe off this, that's just kind of not a great communication venue right now. I'd be glad to have that conversation with you guys. And Jim obviously involved in that too, but you know, there was quite a bit of work that went into dropping everything. I know that there's a dispute about whether or not you think that we should have known that we would have to do that, or maybe we got sloppy. I understand your feelings about that, but keeping in mind, we did do our best to meet what we anticipated to be the requirements, both in the development of those documents, and the editing of those documents, and making sure that we conveyed properly what we were providing and what was coming to you and coming to ECIA, getting you things to review as soon as possible. I understand there's some frustration there, and you know, and at the heat of the moment, back then too, I can honestly say I probably went really far trying to make sure that we crossed all these T's, and I missed them. But I think to say we were sloppy about it, I think it was, we were trying to get this turned around in a matter of days and weeks to check through, you know, 1,000+ pages of documents where it's not just a simple word search. And then to get them overnighted, we were in the middle of a lot of other stuff going on there in terms of where people were, and it did take quite the effort. That time of the year was not the most opportune to get people together in a space and really go over these things. So,
Eldon, I can appreciate that. I can appreciate that it took a lot of time and effort, but we paid you a lot of money to make sure this gets done.
Yeah.
On top of the fact that your expertise.
Yeah, and this is what you do all day, every day.
I guess my question is why are we paying the schooling for you guys to learn how to do it? You should know what to do. So why should the citizens of Peosta, the taxpayers, have to pay for your schooling because you guys screwed it up?
I haven't heard anything in about a minute, sorry.
Okay.
I'm gonna. Maybe the best thing is.
I'm going to make the suggestion that we table this for the next meeting. Jim, Eldon, could one of you be here in person for the next meeting? Or maybe even we have some dialogue between now and then. The message I hope you take from this is we're not prepared to pay the invoice as it was submitted. Are you
Yeah, I understand that. Maybe we can schedule to be in a work session or something where we can be in person. or at least do this over better phone line.
All right.
I don't know, I'm ready to table it.
Okay. You are a council member. What motion would you like to make?
I mean, they had the opportunity to be here tonight.
We're not here tonight.
They did ask. I agreed to the virtual approach.
It's our 18,000 if they want.
But I think it's something that we should allow, being a long-term relationship. I think it's something that it would be in the best interest of everybody if we gave them another 2 weeks. But I understand your frustration.
I disagree with that. But I see where you're coming from. I'll make a motion to table. Or set up another call that works better. Whatever works best.
I'll second.
Doug, no.
Karen, I.
John, I.
Jerry, aye.
So the motion to table the discussion carries with 3 ayes, 1 nay. Eldon, Jim, I appreciate that this, technologically, we're still figuring this out. Thanks for putting up with that with us as best you can. We expect to have this working a lot better once we've had the training.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, we will move on to change order number 4 and pay application number 3, final for the Brady Deerwood project. Is there any narrative to go with this?
Dean, you have anything to say about the project?
No, really nothing to add to it. Everything went pretty smoothly as far as that project went. We still hold, my understanding, we still hold retaining comment, correct?
Correct, this will be the,
So, yes.
entertainment will be the next.
Everything at this point is in proper operation, so I feel it's appropriate.
Thank you. Any other discussion from the council? Otherwise, we'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion to change order number 4.
I'll second.
Doug, aye.
Karen, I.
John, I.
Jerry, aye.
So that was the change order, and then the next one is a resolution accepting the work completed for the same project.
Is there any outstanding items, Steve, on this?
Pardon?
Any outstanding items?
This is the resolution to accept Brady Deerwood project.
No, we're good.
With the exception of seating, and like I said, they have to warranty the project for a year, so yeah, everything's fine.
I'll make a motion to resolution accepting the work completed for the Brady Deerwood Street construction project.
I'll second. Doug, aye.
Karen, I.
John, I.
Jerry, aye.
Motion carries with 4. Next then is the metals ordinance, professional service agreement. This one is outlining a new project with V&K regarding metals in our sanitary sewer. Do we need discussion on this before the motion?
Make the motion for the metals ordinance agreement.
I'll second.
Doug, aye.
Karen, I.
John, I.
Jerry, aye.
Motion carries with 4. Next then is the amendment number 1 to an agreement on the highway lift station add Enterprise Drive.
Yeah, no, this is new. This is not something we have discussed previous, based on some information and something, I guess, Jake shared some information with us yesterday too. The bidding environment, you can imagine, is pretty favorable right now, which is great. And I guess that's kind of an aside. With this project, a portion of Enterprise is going to be disrupted anyways. You'll recall that was in the project. And it was brought up that with Cap Drive being deconstructed soon, we're going to have to redirect the majority of that traffic over to Enterprise. So there is some concern about that road holding up while it takes all of the cap drive traffic. There's also a hope to sort of, again, capitalize on what's a really favorable environment, and we're gonna be tearing up part of it anyways, so the recommendation is to just design it out. Of course, we also would love to see some local infrastructure stimulus come down. You know, we have, at this point, like, it's anybody's guess when it's gonna come out of Washington, so I don't really want to stand up here and pretend that I know that that's gonna happen, but there are a lot of reasons to be prepared to take this on. As mentioned, it'll get bid as an alternate, so this won't be something we're committed to, but if the price is right and the dollars are there and the need is there, we would like to be prepared to capitalize on an opportunity. I don't know, Dean, if you have anything to add, it's kind of just a strategic.
I mean, considering we did have some money allowed for budget, some money for street repair on cap, taking into consideration how it held up throughout, you know, the winters that I've been here, it is in dire need of some definite repair. That being said, patchwork throughout the street project alone is only going to buy us minimal years. Without there being any subgrade underneath there, without there being any subgrade, you know, throughout the shoulder, we're basically beating an uphill battle and getting nowhere and just throwing money away. On top of that, we'd also had a manhole replacement repair that's totally deconstructed, basically. I mean, it's something that we go down there once a month and clean out the debris that falls apart from the manhole, whether it's a matter of steps or the lining in the manhole or, you know, pieces of the pipe or whatever that may fall through there that's creating some blockage in that particular manhole just because of the degrading of it.
We figured out what's going on up there by the stop sign too, by quick stop, turning lane or whatever, where the road's falling apart right there. You know, the blacktop, you did the blacktop.
Oh, where we put the blacktop back in? Basically the
Cement drop
subgrade.
up that far.
Yeah, like I say, the subgrade is, there's basically no subgrade underneath there. There's no rock underneath the road itself. And without there being any subgrade as well, you know, we get moisture down in them cracks and it just deteriorates that stuff. That, you know, our
So it's
concrete
starting
work.
there all the way down to Swiss Valley. Or Swiss County, sorry.
Yep, yep.
Yeah, that's what this.
That's what we're looking at as a project, yep.
So
And
the-
possibly also including a turning lane coming from the north onto Cap Drive as well, or not Cap Drive, I'm sorry, Enterprise.
So, this might be something different, but did we ever ask Swiss Colony if we could use that portion of their road? And we're gonna be chewing that up too.
Yeah, so
The other
we,
road as well.
There's been short conversation. Without actually coming out and asking them if we could, there has been some conversation to an extent.
And they were receptive to it?
We may have to do a little bit of negotiating and compromising on that, yeah.
That's fair.
yeah, that's, we.
But I think we can work.
Would that be a part of this deal, you think? Would that negotiation compromise be fixing whatever we break in their driveway?
Well, that, we won't fix that till after cap's done, so
Right.
it's gonna be,
Because it is falling apart there too. It's probably from excess truck traffic coming from FedEx and all the way around and God knows what else.
Yeah, I mean, they just ignore traffic throughout. I mean, it's just a lot of the general freight deliveries and general public, you know, employees that, for all the businesses that misuse, I should say, the Colony Branch parking lot.
Yeah, the signs are up, but nobody reads signs.
Right.
yeah, I mean, irregardless, there will be have to be some connection put in from cap to Enterprise, so
I
that's.
mean,
And
and
that's-
on this or just leave that totally separate.
Well, yeah, that's for now, that's.
That's something we probably should consider including in the Cap Drive project. After the Cap Drive reconstruction is taking place, you know, maybe it's a resurfacing, building and resurface of the parking lot of Colony Branch that we're doing inclusive to the Cap Drive project.
Are you thinking cement for this road?
Asphalt.
Good, yeah. I like the ability to grind and.
Yeah, doing some thinking and just considering the concrete streets that we have in town and the way they're holding up. hear some negative feedback with the trucks out there and the semi-traffic as to how asphalt's gonna hold up in comparison to concrete. But my theory is, like I say, we have that option at least of doing a quick resurface to it, go through it, in 5, 7, 10 years, and do a quick,
Well, if the truck stopper like want to support the difference in the concrete.
I'm just not happy with the way the concrete streets have opened up.
Well, none of that has rebar in it either, though, right? Is that just like cap?
I'm sure it does not. I'm sure it does not.
I wonder what kind of impact that would have had to have rebar and everything in it. Granted, you're gonna have that undermining, not proper base and all that stuff, so it probably end up the same way.
I mean, throughout, we still have numerous amounts of joints. We got every saw cut, that's more of a maintenance issue. There's definitely cons and pros, but I feel that asphalt's going to be the way to go.
So in front of us right now is an amendment to add the reconstruction, the design of 1,750 feet. That's the whole length of Enterprise Drive.
Yeah, it'd be just shy, I believe. That'd take us down to the storm crossing. So basically, right in front of our shop, what my thoughts are, we'll just do a little mill there and overlay maybe 2 inches on that.
Okay.
Rather than full reconstruction on that portion of it.
But to Whitney's point, this takes all of that work and brings it up to a favorable bidding environment when we're already going to be tearing into the sanitary sewer, which is underneath there as well.
Yep.
Okay. Thanks for the narrative and the explanation there.
Yeah, I mean, and the design's good, even if we decide things change and we're not in a position to do it in the spring, this is work that will need to be done, so even if
Design is done.
design's done, so if we have to put it off for 6 months, 9 months, it's good money.
All right. Any other discussion on this? If not, we can take a motion.
Make a motion to amend the highway lift station and Enterprise Drive project.
I'll second.
Doug, aye.
Karen, I.
Try.
Jerry,
Motion carries with 4. Next is the item that I think Jake has been patiently waiting for. Welcome, Jake. This is plans and specs for annexation utility project.
Thank you.
Go ahead and take it away, Jake.
So we're at the final design point and offered a final design overview with a final opinion of cost on the project. And this is for the upcoming or recent annexations. I'm not sure where the process is, but
complete.
Complete.
We can use the D word. It's done.
Looking for final approval from the council, and so we get advertisement the bids out and then open the bids before the first meeting in December. Regarding what we talked about in June when we got it under contract, then we were talking about an opinion, probable cost of $368,000, and now we're at $345,000. So we're a little over $20,000 under what we were anticipating in June. And as Whitney said, just opened a bid last week at Cascade, and the utility numbers for a water main extension about 25% under my estimate. 2 of them were 20 to 25% under. The rest of them were about where I expected. So if you get the right guys that are looking for work right now, it's a pretty competitive environment. I don't know if you guys have any specific questions on the design or plans.
Can you just speak a little bit about the sizing of this, considering future use?
Yeah, so we came up with a 12-inch extension on regarding sewer. We came up with a 12-inch extension to the point where it turns and goes north, and then it was 8-inch. We elected 8-inch because there's really nowhere else for that gravity to go, unless we had a small lift station north of there that we could tap in there. But even to that point, an 8-inch gravity flowing full can handle quite a bit. The 12-inch, we elected on that in case Bird's Acres or some of that along Leona Drive ends up coming in at some point. We could extend that east into that Bird's Acres property and pick up a good chunk of that. We did a little bit of conceptual work on that Bird's Acres, and that 12-inch should pick up a good chunk of that via gravity, at least south of, I can't remember that main east-west road to Bird's Acres.
Yeah, so everything to the north of that road that comes across kind of falls down, so we're looking at, unfortunately, some different mechanisms, lift stations, things like that, from that side.
So you basically take Bird's Acres and split it in half. There's a north half and a south half. The south half would eventually flow through this 12-inch pipe or main, and the north half there would have to be a different solution for.
Yeah, there was, and I don't remember all the details of that conceptual work that we did, but yeah, basically the north half is going to collect at the main lift station and be pumped across that east-west road into this.
Okay, so all of it would still flow
pick it
through
up,
this.
it's just you got to pump it from the north side of this.
And then there's a different solution for Thunder Ridge already in place.
That's
Yeah.
Would basically split Bird's Acres into threes, actually.
But all of Bird's Acres would eventually go through this pipe.
No, that's incorrect.
Okay.
A portion of it would go down Thunder Hills Road.
Yeah.
And actually go through the main where the construction's taking place now on the commercial properties. A portion, probably, I want to say a third of that Bird's Acres would go through that portion of the sewer.
So the east third maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's already sized for that?
Correct. Yep.
And of course, this all goes to the lift station that's being rebuilt.
Yes. All of this goes to the Highway 20 lift station.
So the 8-inch main is where the five lots are at?
Yes.
Yep. There's a little less than 800 foot of the 8-inch, the rest of it's 12.
So if Bird's hooks up to sewer, can they tie into that 8-inch line and that'll be big enough?
Just those houses on, basically just the houses that you see here in the exhibit. Everything else we'd have to extend that 12-inch into Bird's Acres, which we planned for and it'll work.
Because the sewers will go, those 8 inches will go in the backyards, correct? So it'd be, coming down.
The 8-inch portion of that sewer main is about the extent of where that 8-inch would go. When that 12-inch comes across Cox Springs and heads east, that 12-inch will get extended east further in Bird's Acres to collect some of them other streets in there and houses.
But the 345,000, just to confirm, is just for hooking up to the new lots north of Cox Springs, right? And the water and everything.
Yeah, it's for this 10-inch water main extension to this lot and to bring gravity sewer from your existing at the creek up to here.
So none of this other stuff that we're talking about as far as going.
No, it's gonna be available when and if that happens.
No, yeah, we just wanted to size it accordingly, so that's why we had to do some work to say, in the event when the day comes years down the road that it needs to take all this, will it be able to? So that's how they were able to calculate the size. Yes, I mean, it lays the foundation for that whole area, not just Bird's Acres. So. Opens up a lot of acres for development. Sorry, Karen.
Bird's Acres in town about emergency situation thing, hook up in case you needed water. Would this be the place to put something like that in if we went back and looked that over again, that contract that we were pursued?
So since I've been here, Thunder Hills asked for that. I was not ever part of the Bird's Acres conversation.
This was Bird's Acres.
Okay.
I was never included in any of that conversation of Bird's Acres. I'm not calling you out on.
No, the mayor, You mean the agreement like what the fire department has, the mayor told them, I think? Or they wanted that type of agreement? And I don't know whatever happened to this.
Could they connect
They
there or
want-
not?
And Pat had said there'd have to be a certain type of hookup to let them use it.
I know there's concern that their mains are not sized appropriately to handle our pressure.
Right, absolutely. I don't think they could handle our pressure. We would have to do some studies on that,
I think
correct?
they, from what I remember, they're gonna hook up off of Thunder Hills Road, not this location. That's why Roy ran it all the way to the ditch, going towards Thunder Ridge up there. Like the water.
We never did anything, did we?
No, I don't know if we stuck it, we might have stuck it over to them, to one or the other when they did that, but.
If I remember correctly, when we installed that water main coming from Thunder Ridge, I think we put a T in there.
Up the intersection?
At the intersection of Bird's Acres. I believe we put a T in for that reason.
Okay.
But the pressure was.
Then it wouldn't affect us at all, I'm sorry.
But that'd be all, I mean, also we need to keep in mind that that's all fed off the booster station, so the pressures would be increased, and I don't think they could handle that type of pressure increase.
I'm not,
That'd be,
some of the stuff I've heard, I'm not sure that the city's, it would be in the city's best interest to take ownership of that.
yeah.
Water system out there.
No, it wasn't taken off.
I don't know if I don't know.
I think Karen's just referring to, an alternative for an emergency
In case of
supply.
emergency, yeah, that's all it was.
Correct. And Thunder Hills also approached us on that about a year ago.
Oh, geez, hear about that.
They just annex it, it's all problem.
So this proposed water main, the blue line, services those 4 lots. The next lot to the north is partially off the page. How does it get its water?
From Bird's Acres water system.
That's the Bird's Acres, the old home place, right?
The farm.
Yes.
So is that being annexed in?
No.
No.
It looks like there's 10 inch across the road, you can pull that across the street pretty easy.
School.
Oh, you see a 10-inch along Cox Springs?
Yeah, on the west
I
side,
see.
north of Birds.
Yeah.
Looks like there's an existing 10 inch on the school side.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. I've run out of questions. Anybody else? So the action in front of us is what?
Is to motion to approve the plans and specs for this project.
Make a motion to approve the plans and specs for the annexation utility project.
I'll second.
Doug, aye.
Karen, I.
Shut up.
Motion carries with 4. Jake, thank you very much
Thank you.
for your patience and being here with us.
Have a good evening.
You too,
You
thank
too.
you.
So we'll move on to the administration section in the home stretch. First up is a resolution approving the amended employee handbook.
Okay.
So it looks like the handbook had a couple small changes here. You want to give a quick description, Whitney?
Yes, so there was some gray area in the callback procedure. This was brought to my attention by Dean, so this was his recommendation, and I agreed. So we have the benefit, sometimes it's just some unusual schedules here. So for a administrative logistics issue, it's not practical. And for a resident value aspect, it's not practical either. So we are just codifying the fact that callback pay is triggered when a call is made outside of business hours. Generally, the previous language kind of made it seem specific to that individual's work schedule, and it's not practical or efficient to sometimes try to rearrange work hours to avoid callback. So we wanted to really just make that a standard time frame when everybody is aware of when we're talking. when we're in a callback situation and when we're not, when we're in a regular hour situation. So we're trying to respect the fact that flexible scheduling is a benefit, but there should not be any sort of repercussion on the city's end. So that's why we chose to make that a standard set hours. You know, sometimes even hours, regular schedules change from season to season, they change from week to week, and we're just running into a little bit of confusion on what qualified.
Any further discussion on that before a motion? If not, we'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion to resolution approving the amended employee handbook.
Second that, Doug, aye.
Karen, I.
John, aye.
Motion carries with 4. Next up is the resolution authorizing internal advance for funding of the urban renewal projects. Once again, Whitney, this would probably benefit from just a sentence or two of intro on this, or explanation.
So this, I apologize in advance, internal loans are kind of a confusing concept. So this basically amounts to one fund in the city loaning money to another fund in the city. So in this case, there are a couple of different reasons. There's 3 internal loans we're making. 2 of those are for the purpose of it was project work. So like in Deerwood Brady, we're advancing the money to close out that capital project. It's what we call a 300 fund. So that project is about done. We're going to pay the retainage, and then we want to zero that project out. Also, a portion of that project is TIF, though, so it will be reimbursed over the next 3 years. But we don't. So we'll zero out the capital project fund, and then we'll reimburse the fund from which we're internally loaning the money. So that prevents that capital project from staying open and on the books for 3 years after it's completed. That's the same concept that we're doing with the round 2 forgivable loan. Obviously, we paid that out of cash. It is going to be reimbursed with TIF, so this just provides that trail. In the instance of the loan interest, this is for the loan we just had the public hearings on. Because we're going to go to market with those bonds in the winter, we will then have a small step of relatively, a interest payment in June right away. So in order to begin collecting those TIF dollars that are going to support those TIF projects that we're borrowing money for, we have to certify a debt to the county this month. So obviously we don't have to write that interest check till June, but to certify that debt now we have to create a debt. So this internal loan it's extremely legal, it's totally by the book, but we're internally loaning ourselves money in order to create a loan. In order to create a record of debt, we are taking the money that we're going to use to pay that, make that payment, moving it to another fund. By doing that, we then create a debt because Fund X now owes Fund Y money. So then we can certify it to the county. This is a debt. It's documented by these steps in our attorneys. And so then we will cut that check in June, and then starting July 1, we can begin collecting the TIF revenues to backfill that. If we didn't do that, we would have to wait till June, cut the check, and then certify it next November, which means it would be 18 months from now before we would start collecting. So this all hinges on the fact that debt or TIF certifications cannot happen. You cannot use TIF fund for a project until a debt has actually been incurred. So it doesn't allow you to collect TIF in advance. You have to spend the money, acquire the debt, before you can ask the county to begin collecting it. So in this case, I mean, while we are slightly in advance, the county will not be collecting any funds until those dollars have left the city which they will on June 1st, 2021. All right, it's a lot of words, but this is a highly procedural.
If we had been leveraging the TIF money available to us in past years, this would not be necessary this year, right?
Well, it would be, it still would be from the perspective that this particular project, we would not be collecting for. So
Okay.
we have to do the project, then collect. The issue is when we are leveraging our full TIF capacity, you almost have this like rolling wheel where it's
Right.
coming, you know, you're getting TIF from XYZ projects from the past 3, 4, 5, 6 years, and you still have one going on. So you are correct in the essence that once we're really rolling, we won't be you won't see our TIF fund will just constantly have a higher balance because we have TIF money going in, going out at a much more regular rate. Right now we're really ramping up, so it's gonna take a minute to get everything balanced.
So the action to the council is to approve this resolution authorizing the internal advance.
That is correct, yeah. And these resolutions, I'm sure you can see, I mean, they come straight from our body attorneys. These are solid.
I'll make a motion for resolution to authorize internal advance for funding of road projects.
I'll second.
Doug, aye.
Karen, aye.
John, I.
Motion carries with 4 ayes. And then the next one, I just want to make sure I have this clear. This is correcting what we did at the last one, right?
That is correct.
So in our previous meeting, we took an action with 3 ayes and 1 nay, right? So that's, and it was to waive the second and third readings of the mobile food vendor ordinance. Subsequent to the meeting, we learned that the procedures don't allow for that. We needed to have all 4 of 4, given that we have a vacancy at the moment.
Yes.
Pause by the background noise.
Requires 3/4. The code says 3/4 vote, so I was incorrect. We had 3/4 of presence. We did not have 3/4 of total council.
Right. So because of the vacancy, we had to have all 4, well, even without the vacancy, we would have to have 4 ayes. So we need to go back, and what we will do now to correct that is we will have the second reading tonight, and then we'll have the third reading at our next meeting, after which we can take the motion on this to approve it.
That's correct.
Everybody good on that? So for tonight, we'll do, that's just the setup for this. We'll call this the public reading of the ordinance for mobile food vendors.
I'll make a motion.
Second. Doug, aye.
Karen, aye.
John, I.
Terry, aye.
Motion carries with 4. And item D says new agenda item.
That was incorrect or errant item.
All right. So that works us through the full agenda. The last item here is for citizen comment. Gentlemen, you're the 2 left in the room. Anything you'd like to add?
Well, by our paper, we are required to ask at least one question.
Now's your chance.
As pretty much growing up in this is more of a general question for all of you, but as growing up in this, as still a small town to me, that's how I grew up with it as, but it's gotten a lot bigger. What is your guys' like goals or your future outlook for this town?
It's a good question.
It is a good question. I'd like to hear the answer to this.
Well, I think we're going to find out with the this
Comprehensive
plan that we're putting together, or being put together for us, that we're going to have a lot of those answers from this in the next couple of months. We hired a firm to come out and interview citizens, talk to us, talk to staff, as far as goals, short-term goals, long-term goals, and kind of compile this plan. And pretty much going to be dumped on us soon, right?
See it tomorrow evening.
Yeah, real soon.
At least the first step.
Right.
So, I mean, I think all of us have our own different goals and plans and wants and needs. But this plan will kind of help incorporate what everybody wants.
Jerry, would you add anything? Karen?
Maybe get extra credit if you get on the site tomorrow night and watch it.
He's got extra credit for helping us get everything.
You didn't even ask this question.
I'm gonna ask you guys questions. I tried my hardest with it, but with the limited amount of time I had to get it set up, I couldn't do much. I don't understand how he couldn't hear you guys half the time, especially with that as a big microphone, and you guys being in Ethernet plugged in, it's got no delay between internet connection to that laptop, so either you guys weren't talking very loud, which from listening, you, Jim, and Doug are kind of soft spoken, so I can understand how he couldn't hear you guys, but with you, she was not soft spoken. She was very clear with everything that she had said, so.
Doug, was there anything you were going to add?
I was just going to say, I think I can speak for everybody on the council with this concept. I think the plan is, we look at this as just the council wants, we're looking at this as the whole town wants, needs. So, get on the site tomorrow night and watch it.
What time will it be?
7 o'clock, right?
7 o'clock. You can go to the city website, or it'll be streamed on Facebook too. And I think both offer the opportunity for you to give feedback.
This is the worst time ever because I have to go to a city council meeting.
You should have procrastinated.
It should be. I mean, once it goes Facebook Live, right? Isn't it on there?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it'll be on there.
Go to City Peosta.
Yeah. Or you could just go to peostaplan.com. Yeah. Peostaplan.com or org. No, cityofpeosta.org. Peostaplan.com, I think, is it.
Yeah. What's your school email address?
ROLISA at wvbqschools.org.
ROLISA.
Yes.
Got it.
You might have some trouble on it.
And most of the time, it doesn't allow us to receive external emails, but you could try.
Okay. Well, yeah, City of Peosta Facebook page will have.
Should have numerous ways.
It wasn't so much procrastination as it was having the time. I pretty much worked full time.
That's awesome. I've got kids, and I know my kids' experience was procrastination.
You know, I work Monday through Friday, 5 to 11 o'clock. So,
wow.
And I also have college courses over at NICC, so I go from high school to NICC till 3:30, and then I go to work till 11 o'clock every day.
Wow. Makes me seem like an underachiever. That's awesome.
I have another question here.
Yeah.
You just want to have somebody to sign it.
So there are a few public hearings tonight that nobody said anything for. Is like, how often does that happen? Is it like almost every hearing, or is there more participation when you know, COVID isn't a thing?
So procedurally, the council acts on resolutions and ordinances.
Okay.
And they're kind of different things, and I got to keep watching Whitney because I'm learning this myself. I've only been doing this since January. But the resolutions are, I almost have a hierarchy in my head. They're a little lower level, easier things to pass, and we can pass those on a simple motion at the council. Ordinances require public hearings, 3 public hearings before they're passed. They're typically of a bigger impact. Whitney, how would you characterize the difference between it? How would you define the difference?
An ordinance becomes more like what you would call a law or like a statute that the nice chief down there is going to enforce. You know, resolutions are usually more of some kind of an administrative nature, or they're like setting a fee, you know, or
Best practices.
yeah. So they're just a little different. And so the thing with public hearings is, I would say we have them for 2 separate reasons. Tonight, what you heard are public hearings that we are required by law to have. A lot of those are generally of not a lot required to have a public hearing again on, in this case, to consider two different purposes for borrowing money. And we're not really talking about projects, it's not really a ton of decision making. Now, sometimes the council will choose to hold a public hearing over something that we don't have to do it legally, but it's a great idea because we want to get public input. Those tend to be a little more exciting, and people are usually more interested. Like, say if we were gonna think about building a $5 million swimming pool baseball complex, that'd be something we would do some more purposeful outreach on and hold a public hearing. Now, I know they've had, before I worked here, they had a public hearing on specially assessing or charging homeowners to fix a street under their house, and they got a lot of participation in that.
Another example where there were a lot more here was when this past summer, when we passed the ATV UTV ordinance. There was a tremendous amount of participation at that point as well. That was a very important topic to a lot of people. So I think it goes both ways to answer your question. Many of them have no engagement from the community, and some do. Some get a lot.
Okay. So next it says I need a signature of an official. I assume I can just do.
We'll do that right after we adjourn. Anything else from you guys?
Alright, yeah. Your flags are backwards.
Oh, nice save. Right time for back.
Good catch. We knew you were coming. That was a test. You passed. All right.
Letting us know.
Yes. Meeting adjourned. We'll do those signatures now. Oh, I'm sorry. I need a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Karen, I.
Jedi.
Meeting adjourned. Let's fix, well, they're going to go back to the corner for now.